My name is Joyce, and at 53 I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like. Until my 28-year-old daughter Madison screamed those words that shattered my world. "Pay rent or leave," she demanded, standing in the living room of what she believed was her rental home. Little did she know I had spent 8 years of my life working 2 jobs, saving every penny to buy this house. For her. The deed was in my name, the mortgage was paid off, and I had never told her the truth. Before I share what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, you will not believe how this turned out. Let me take you back to where this all began 15 years ago, when my world first fell apart. My divorce from Marcus had been brutal, not just emotionally, but financially. He left me with nothing but debt and a 7-year-old daughter who needed stability more than anything else in the world. I remember looking at Madison's innocent face and making a promise that would shape the next decade and a half of my life. She would have a real home, not another cramped rental apartment where we would always be at someone else's mercy. Those early years were the hardest thing I had ever endured. I took a job as a secretary at Henderson Insurance during the day, answering phones and filing paperwork for $32,000 a year. But that was not enough to save for a house while covering our daily expenses. So when Madison went to bed each night, I would put on my cleaning uniform and head to the office buildings downtown. From midnight until 6 in the morning, I scrubbed floors, emptied trash cans, and cleaned bathrooms. The additional $18,000 a year from that job was what made my dream possible. For 8 long years, I lived on 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. I would come home exhausted, get Madison ready for schoolwork. My day job, come home to help her with homework and make dinner, then head out again for my night shift. Madison never knew about the second job. She thought I was visiting friends or running errands. I could not bear the thought of her feeling guilty about the sacrifices I was making. Every dollar that did not go toward our basic needs went into my house fund. I packed our lunches instead of buying them cut coupons, religiously bought clothes from thrift stores, and drove a car that was already 15 years old when I bought it. Madison sometimes complained about our lifestyle, asking why we could not eat out like her friends' families, or why she could not have name-brand shoes. I always told her we were saving for something special, and she seemed to accept that explanation. The process of actually buying a house was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. After saving for 8 years, I had managed to put together $60,000 for a down payment. The house I found was a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a safe neighborhood with good schools listed at $210,000. The mortgage payments would be manageable on my combined income, and I knew this was our chance. The day we moved in, Madison was 16 and absolutely thrilled. She ran from room to room claiming the larger bedroom as her own and talking about how we could decorate. I let her believe what everyone else believed, that I had found an amazing rental deal. The lie felt necessary at the time. Madison was already a responsible teenager, but I did not want her to feel the weight of home ownership or worry about property taxes and maintenance costs. I wanted her to feel free to be a normal kid. Throughout high school, Madison thrived. She brought friends over, constantly hosted study groups in our living room, and treated the house like the home it truly was. After graduation, she went to the local state university, majoring in marketing, while living at home to save money. I was so proud when she landed her first real job after college, a marketing coordinator position that paid $35,000 a year. Finally, my little girl was becoming an independent adult. But somewhere in that transition from dependent child to working adult, something began to shift in Madison's attitude toward me. Maybe it was natural growing pains, or maybe she was trying to assert her independence. She started making comments about how I needed to contribute more to household expenses. At first, these comments seemed reasonable. She was earning good money and wanted to feel like an equal partner in our living arrangement. What Madison did not realize was that I was still paying the property taxes, homeowners insurance, all utilities, internet, and every maintenance cost for the house. Her contribution to household expenses was buying groceries twice a month and paying for her own car insurance. But in her mind, she was carrying the bulk of our financial burden. The disconnect between her perception and reality was growing wider every day, and I had no idea how to bridge it without revealing the truth about home ownership. The first real confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening in late September. I had just gotten home from work when Madison cornered me in the kitchen. Her face was flushed with anger, and I could tell she had been building up to this conversation all day. "Mum, we need to talk about money," she said, crossing her arms and blocking my path to the refrigerator. "I have been thinking, and this arrangement is not fair to me anymore." I set down my purse and gave her my full attention. "What do you mean, honey?" "I mean, I am paying most of the rent on this place while you are basically getting a free ride," she continued, her voice rising with each word. "I think you should start paying $800 a month for your room. That is only fair since you are using half the space." The irony of the situation hit me like a physical blow. Here was my daughter demanding that I pay rent to live in the house that I owned, the house that I had worked 2 jobs for 8 years to buy, the house where I paid every single bill except groceries. But I could not say any of that without revealing the secret I had kept for over a decade. "Madison, I think there might be some confusion about our finances," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice calm. "I am still covering a lot of expenses that you might not be aware of." "Like what?" she challenged. "I pay the rent, I buy most of the food, I even bought that new couch last month." "What exactly are you paying for?" I wanted to show her the property tax statements, the insurance bills, the mortgage papers that proved the house was paid off. Instead, I found myself trying to explain without revealing the whole truth. "There are utilities, maintenance costs, repairs when things break down." "Those are tiny compared to rent," Madison shot back. "And anyway, if you cannot afford to live here, maybe you should find somewhere cheaper. I am not going to support you forever, Mum." The word support stung more than I expected. My own daughter thought I was a financial burden, when in reality she was living rent-free in a house I had sacrificed everything to provide for her. The conversation ended with Madison storming off to her room, leaving me standing in the kitchen feeling like a stranger in my own home. Over the following weeks, Madison's demands became more frequent and more aggressive. She started leaving me notes about my fair share of expenses. She calculated what she thought the total household costs should be and presented me with spreadsheets showing how much I owed her. According to her math, I was behind by several $1,000s. The situation became even more complicated when her boyfriend Brian started spending more time at the house. Brian was 32, worked in construction, and had very strong opinions about financial responsibility. He encouraged Madison's belief that I was taking advantage of her generosity. During dinner conversation, he would make comments about people who refused to pull their own weight, while looking directly at me. Brian's presence changed the entire dynamic of our home. Suddenly, I felt like I needed permission to use the living room when he was there. Madison would give me disapproving looks if I tried to join their conversations. They started referring to different areas of the house as their space, and making it clear that I was intruding when I spent time in common areas. The most humiliating moment came when Madison invited some of her college friends over for dinner. As I was setting the table, she pulled me aside and whispered, "Mom, could you maybe eat in your room tonight? We want to have some privacy, and it is kind of awkward with you here." I spent that evening alone in my bedroom, listening to the laughter and conversation coming from the dining room of my own house. That was the night I started to seriously consider whether keeping this secret had been a terrible mistake. But I still hoped that if I just gave Madison time to mature, She would come to understand the value of family and respect. The breaking point came on a cold Thursday evening in November. I had been fighting a nasty case of the flu for several days and had to call in sick from work twice that week. Between the missed work days and the cost of medication, I was a few days late with the $800 Madison had been demanding each month. I had been paying it, even though it felt like being charged rent to live in my own house, because I wanted to keep peace in our relationship. I was resting on the couch with a cup of tea when Madison and Brian came home from dinner. They had obviously been drinking, and their voices were louder than usual. Madison took one look at me, and her expression darkened. "Are you kidding me right now?" She said, her words slightly slurred. "You are just sitting here like you own the place while you owe me money." "Madison, I have been sick," I said quietly, not wanting to escalate the situation. "I will get you the money as soon as I go back to work tomorrow." "That is not the point," she shouted, and Brian nodded his encouragement behind her. "The point is that you think you can just live here for free whenever you feel like it. This is not how the real world works, Mum." Brian stepped forward, emboldened by the alcohol and Madison's anger. "Your daughter has been way too generous with you," he said, pointing his finger at me. "Most people would have kicked you out months ago." I felt my own anger rising for the first time in months. "This is between Madison and me," I said firmly. "You do not get to tell me how to handle my relationship with my daughter." "Actually, he does get a say," Madison snapped back. "Because we are planning to get engaged, and I am not going to start a marriage with a freeloader mother-in-law living in our house." The words hit me like a slap across the face. Our house. She truly believed that this house belonged to her and Brian, and that I was some kind of charity case they were grudgingly supporting. I tried one more time to make her understand, without revealing everything. "Madison, there are things about our living situation that you do not understand," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "If you would just let me explain the financial arrangements." "What is there to explain?" she interrupted. "I pay the rent, you live here for free. And now you want to make excuses about why you cannot even cover your basic share. I am done with this, Mum. I am absolutely done." She turned to Brian, who was smirking with satisfaction at the confrontation. "Tell her," Madison said to him. "Tell her what we decided." Brian crossed his arms and looked at me with undisguised contempt. "We have been talking, and we think you need to either start paying your fair share immediately or find somewhere else to live. Madison has been supporting you long enough." "It is not supporting," I said desperately. "You do not understand how our finances actually work." "Stop lying," Madison screamed louder than I had ever heard her before. "I am so tired of your manipulation and your excuses. I work hard for my money, and I am not going to let you guilt-trip me into supporting you anymore." The neighbors could probably hear her screaming, and I felt a deep shame wash over me. This was my daughter. The little girl I had worked 2 jobs to provide for, publicly humiliating me in the home I had sacrificed everything to give her. "I am ashamed to call you my mother," Madison continued, her face red with rage. "You have turned into this pathetic person who just takes and takes without giving anything back. Brian is right. Most people would have thrown you out months ago." The cruelty in her voice was unlike anything I had ever experienced from her before. This was not the thoughtful, kind girl I had raised. Brian's influence had clearly changed her perspective on our relationship, turning love and family obligation into transactional calculations. "You have 48 hours," Madison said with finality. "Either come up with the money you owe me, plus a plan for regular payments, or pack your things and leave. I will not live like this anymore." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. I thought about all those years of working 2 jobs, all the nights I had gone without sleep, all the sacrifices I had made to give Madison the security of home ownership. I thought about the deed in my filing cabinet with my name on it, and the mortgage statements showing a zero balance. Most of all, I thought about the daughter I had raised and the woman she had become. Somewhere along the way, I had failed to teach her the most important values: respect, gratitude, and the understanding that love is not a business transaction. My desire to protect her from financial stress had backfired completely, creating an entitled young woman who saw kindness as weakness and generosity as stupidity. As the sun came up on Friday morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. Madison wanted to treat our relationship like a landlord and tenant arrangement. It was time to show her what that actually looked like. Friday morning brought a clarity I had not felt in months. I called in sick to work one more time, not because I was still fighting the flu, but because I had important business to handle. My first call was to Sarah Thompson, the real estate lawyer who had helped me navigate the home buying process 12 years ago. "Joyce," Sarah's warm voice came through the phone. "What a pleasant surprise. How are you and Madison doing?" "That is actually why I am calling Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to discuss my options regarding the house on Maple Street. I am thinking about selling." There was a pause before Sarah responded. "Is everything all right? You worked so hard to get that house, and I know how much it means to you." I gave her the basic outline of my situation, careful not to sound too emotional or vindictive. I explained that Madison was now an independent adult who wanted to take on more responsibility, and that I was considering downsizing to something more manageable for a single woman my age. "Well, you certainly have options," Sarah said thoughtfully. "The market in your neighborhood has improved significantly since you bought. Houses similar to yours have been selling for well above what you paid. I would estimate your property is now worth somewhere between $450,000 and $475,000. The number took my breath away. I had bought the house for $210,000, which meant I stood to make a profit of well over $250,000, more than enough to start over completely. "If you are serious about this, Joyce, I can recommend an excellent realtor. But I want to make sure you are making this decision for the right reasons. Selling your home is a big step." "I am very serious, Sarah," I said with more confidence than I had felt in months. "Please give me the realtor's contact information." My second call was to David Martinez, the realtor Sarah had recommended. David had an excellent reputation in our area and specialized in quick sales for clients who needed to move fast. When I explained my timeline, he was immediately interested. "I can be at your house this afternoon for a walkthrough and market analysis," he said. "From what you are describing and given the neighborhood, I think we can move very quickly. How soon are you hoping to close?" "As soon as possible," I told him. 30 days would be ideal. "That is definitely doable with the right buyer. Let me do some research on comparable sales, and I will have a better idea of our strategy by this afternoon." While I waited for David to arrive, I started going through my personal belongings and deciding what I would take with me and what I would leave behind. Most of the furniture could stay with the house since I was planning to downsize significantly. The important things were my personal papers, family photos, my clothes, and a few sentimental items that had belonged to my grandmother. Madison and Brian were both at work, so I had the house to myself for the first time in months. It felt strange to walk through the rooms knowing that this might be one of my last days living here. Every corner held memories of Madison's childhood: the kitchen where I had helped her with homework, the living room where she had opened Christmas presents, the backyard where she had played with friends. But those memories belonged to a different time when Madison was a child who respected and appreciated her mother. The young woman who lived here now saw me as a burden and an obstacle to her happiness with Brian. Maybe it was time to let her learn what adult responsibility actually looked like. David arrived at 3 o'clock sharp, a professional man in his 50s with an expensive suit and a confident handshake. He spent an hour going through every room of the house, taking notes and photographs. His enthusiasm grew as the walkthrough continued. "This is a beautiful property, Joyce," he said as we finished looking at the backyard. "You have maintained it excellently, and the improvements you have made over the years have really added value. I think my initial estimate was actually conservative. What are you thinking now?" "I think we can list this at 475,000 and expect to get close to asking price, possibly even a bidding war if we market it correctly. The housing shortage in this area is working in our favor." The number seemed almost surreal. When I had bought this house, $400,000 seemed like an impossible amount of money. Now it was going to be my reality. "How quickly can we move on this?" I asked. "If you sign with me today, I can have professional photos taken tomorrow, and we can list by Monday. I already have 3 families looking in this price range and neighborhood. I would not be surprised if we had offers by the end of next week." I signed the listing agreement that afternoon. David assured me that he would handle all the marketing and showings and that I could continue living in the house until closing. He also recommended a moving company and gave me contact information for several apartment complexes that catered to professional singles. That evening, I called and put a deposit down on a 1-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from my office. It was small, but modern, with amenities like a fitness center and pool that I had never had access to before. The rent was $850 a month, almost exactly what Madison had been demanding that I pay her. For the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of my own life, instead of just reacting to other people's demands. Madison wanted me to learn about financial responsibility and pulling my own weight. She was about to get a very expensive education in both of those concepts. The first showing was scheduled for the following Tuesday, and I had to figure out how to be away from the house for several hours without arousing Madison's suspicion. I told her I was visiting my old friend Carol across town and would be gone most of the afternoon. Madison barely looked up from her phone when I left. David called me that evening with exciting news. The young family who had viewed the house that afternoon wanted to schedule a second showing for the weekend and bring their parents to see the property. They were pre-approved for a mortgage and very motivated to buy quickly. "I think we might have our buyers, Joyce," David said. "The husband is being transferred for work, and they need to close fast. Their timeline matches perfectly with yours." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means if they make an offer, we could potentially close in 3 weeks instead of 4. Are you prepared for that kind of timeline?" I thought about my situation with Madison and Brian. Every day that passed brought more tension and more demands. The sooner I could resolve this situation, the better. "Yes, I am ready for a quick close," I told David. That weekend, while Madison and Brian were out apartment hunting for what they believed would be their own place, the Williams family came for their second showing. Tom and Jennifer Williams had 2 young children, ages 6 and 8, and they fell in love with the house immediately. The children were already planning which room would belong to whom, and Jennifer was measuring the kitchen for new curtains. "This is exactly what we have been looking for," Jennifer told David. "The neighborhood is perfect for the kids, and the house has so much character. What would it take to make an offer today?" David called me that evening with the news. The Williams family was offering $475,000, full asking price with a 3-week close and a minimal inspection period. They were putting down 20% and had already been approved for their mortgage. "This is as good as it gets, Joyce," David said. "Clean offer, motivated buyers, quick close. Do you want to accept?" I thought about Madison's ultimatum, about Brian's smug expressions, about the way they had made me feel like a stranger in my own home. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I accept their offer." The paperwork was finalized on Monday morning. Closing was scheduled for exactly 3 weeks from that date, which would give me time to pack my belongings and finalize my apartment rental. I felt a mixture of sadness and relief as I signed the documents that would transfer ownership of my home to the Williams family. Now came the hardest part, telling Madison that I was moving out without revealing that I was also selling the house. I wanted her to experience the full impact of adult responsibility before she learned the truth about what she had actually lost. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a simple note. Madison, I have found another place to live and will be moving out this weekend. You will hear from the new owners soon. Take care of yourself. Mum. I left the note on her pillow while she was at work on Tuesday, along with my key to the house. Then I packed my belongings into my car and drove to my new apartment. After 12 years of home ownership and raising my daughter in that house, my entire life fit into the back of my compact car. The apartment felt strange and empty that first night, but also peaceful. For the first time in months, I did not have to worry about someone criticizing my presence in my own living space. I did not have to ask permission to watch television or feel guilty about eating food I had bought with my own money. Madison called me 3 times that evening, but I did not answer. She left voicemails that ranged from confused to angry to worried. She wanted to know where I had gone, why I had left so suddenly, and when I was coming back. The last message was from Brian, demanding that I return his calls and explain myself. I turned off my phone and went to bed early. Tomorrow, Madison would begin learning what it actually meant to be financially responsible for a household. I wondered how long it would take her to realize what she had really lost. The first week after I moved out, Madison left me dozens of messages. Initially, she sounded annoyed that I had left without discussing my plans with her. She complained that I had stuck her with all the household responsibilities without warning. But she also sounded relieved, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Mum, I do not know why you are being so dramatic about this, she said in one voicemail. You could have just talked to me instead of sneaking out like a teenager. But honestly, Brian and I are excited to have the whole house to ourselves. Call me back so we can figure out when you are coming to get the rest of your stuff. There was no rest of my stuff. Everything I cared about was already in my apartment. The furniture, appliances, and household items I had left behind were my gift to Madison, though she did not know that yet. By the second week, Madison's messages became more concerned. She had apparently tried to contact the landlord about removing my name from the lease and adding Brian's name, but she could not figure out who actually owned the house. The property management company she thought we rented from had no record of our address. Mum, this is really weird, she said, in a message that sounded genuinely confused. I am trying to get the lease updated, but nobody seems to know who we rent from. I found some old mail addressed to you from a law office, and there are these official-looking documents in your filing cabinet. Can you please call me back and explain how the rental arrangement works? I could imagine her going through my personal papers, trying to make sense of property tax statements and homeowners' insurance policies. The truth was probably starting to dawn on her, but she was not ready to accept it yet. During the third week, the Williams family's mortgage was finalized, and we scheduled the closing for Friday afternoon. David assured me that all the paperwork was in order and that the buyers were eager to take possession of the house immediately. They are planning to move in over the weekend, he told me. I hope your daughter is prepared for that. She will be, I said, though I wondered if that was really true. On Thursday evening, exactly 21 days after I had moved out, David called to confirm our closing appointment for the following afternoon. After tomorrow, you will officially be a woman of considerable means, he said cheerfully. Have you decided what you want to do with the proceeds? I had been thinking about that question for weeks. After paying off the small remaining balance on my car loan and setting aside money for taxes, I would still have over $400,000. It was more money than I had ever imagined having, and it represented complete financial freedom for the rest of my life. I think I am going to travel I told David. I have been working since I was 16 years old, and I have never taken a real vacation. Maybe it is time to see some of the world. Friday afternoon, I sat in Sarah Thompson's office and signed the papers that transferred ownership of my house to Tom and Jennifer Williams. When the last document was notarized and the wire transfer was confirmed, I officially became a very wealthy woman. "Congratulations, Joyce," Sarah said, shaking my hand. "You should be very proud of what you have accomplished. You bought that house with nothing but determination and hard work, and now you are reaping the rewards of that investment." As I walked out of the lawyer's office, I felt lighter than I had in years. I was free from a mortgage, free from the responsibility of home ownership, and free from the toxic relationship that had developed between Madison and me. Whatever happened next, I would face it as an independent woman with choices. The Williams family was planning to move in the next morning, which meant Madison was about to get the shock of her life. Saturday morning, I was enjoying my first leisurely breakfast in my apartment when my phone started ringing. Madison's number appeared on the screen, and something in my chest tightened. This was the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating for 3 weeks. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again, and again. By the fourth call, I realized I needed to face this conversation eventually. "Hello, Madison," I said, keeping my voice calm and neutral. "Mom!" She practically screamed into the phone. "What the hell is going on?" "There are people at the house with moving trucks saying they bought it from you. They have keys and paperwork, and they are telling Brian and me that we have to leave." I could hear Brian's voice in the background, along with what sounded like other voices. The Williams family had arrived to move in exactly as scheduled. "Did you hear me?" Madison continued, her voice rising to near hysteria. "These people are saying you sold them our house. That is impossible because you do not own it, right? Tell them you do not own it." The moment I had been preparing for had finally arrived. "Madison," I said quietly, "I do own it. I bought that house 12 years ago." There was complete silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Brian asking what I had said, but Madison did not respond to him. "That is not possible," she finally whispered. "We have been renting it. You always said we were renting it." "I said a lot of things to protect you from adult responsibilities that I did not think you were ready for," I replied. "But you made it very clear that you want to be treated like an adult, so I am treating you like one." "Mom, this is not funny." Madison's voice was shaking now. "These people are telling us we have to be out by tonight. Where are we supposed to go?" "That is not my problem anymore, Madison. You told me that you were tired of supporting me, that I was a freeloader who did not contribute anything to the household. You gave me 48 hours to pay rent or leave my own house." I could hear her crying now, and despite everything that had happened between us, my heart ached for her. She was learning a very painful lesson, but it was one that she had brought on herself. "I do not understand," she sobbed. "If you owned the house, why did you let me think we were renting? Why did you take money from me every month?" "Because you insisted on it," I said simply. "You demanded that I pay $800 a month in rent, so I did. I paid my own daughter rent to live in the house that I owned, the house that I bought by working 2 jobs for 8 years, so that you could have a stable home." 2 jobs. Madison's voice was barely a whisper now. "What? 2 jobs?" I told her about the years I had spent cleaning office buildings after she went to bed, about the sacrifices I had made to save for a down payment, about the mortgage I had paid off 3 years ago. I explained about the property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance costs that I had covered, while she complained about supporting me financially. "Mum," she said, and I could hear the realization dawning in her voice. "I had no idea. Why did not you tell me?" because I wanted you to feel independent and capable, not burdened by the responsibilities of home ownership. I thought I was protecting you, but clearly I did you a disservice by not teaching you the value of what you had. Brian had apparently figured out what was happening, because I could hear him in the background, demanding to know how Madison had not known her mother owned the house. Their relationship was probably about to face its first real test. "Mom, please," Madison begged. "Can you fix this? Can you call these people and tell them there was a mistake? I will pay you back every penny, I promise. I will treat you better. I will respect you. I will do whatever you want." The desperation in her voice broke my heart, but I knew that rescuing her from this situation would not teach her anything meaningful. She needed to experience the full consequences of her actions. "The house is sold, Madison. The papers are signed. The money has been transferred, and the new owners have every right to move in today. You and Brian need to figure out where you are going to live, just like every other adult in the world has to do. But I do not have enough money for a security deposit and first month's rent somewhere else," she cried. "Most places require first and last month's rent, and I just spent my savings on new furniture for what I thought was my house. Then you will have to stay with friends or family until you can save up enough money," I said. "That is what people do when they cannot afford housing. That is the reality of adult life that you wanted me to learn." "Mom, I am sorry." Madison was sobbing uncontrollably now. "I am so sorry for the way I treated you. I did not understand I was wrong about everything. Please do not do this to me." "I am not doing anything to you, Madison. I am simply allowing you to experience the natural consequences of the choices you made. You decided that our relationship should be transactional rather than familial. You chose to treat me like a tenant rather than your mother. This is what that looks like in the real world." The phone call ended with Madison crying and promising to call me back after she figured out her immediate housing situation. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, but I also felt no guilt about my decision. She was 28 years old, employed, and perfectly capable of solving her own problems if she was willing to take responsibility for them. 3 hours later, Brian called me directly. His tone was angry and accusatory, which did not surprise me at all. "This is really messed up," he said without any greeting. "You just made your own daughter homeless because you were mad about rent money. What kind of mother does that? The kind of mother who spent 8 years working 2 jobs to buy her daughter a house," I replied calmly. "The kind of mother who paid every household expense while being accused of freeloading. The kind of mother who took verbal abuse in her own home because she loved her daughter more than her own dignity." "Madison did not know any of that stuff about you owning the house," Brian protested. "If you had just told her the truth, none of this would have happened." "You are absolutely right," I agreed. "If I had taught Madison from the beginning that respect and gratitude are not optional, even in family relationships, none of this would have happened. But I tried to protect her from adult responsibilities, and the result was raising an entitled young woman who thought love meant never having to say thank you." "So you are punishing her for your own parenting mistakes," Brian shot back. "I am allowing her to learn lessons that she should have learned years ago. She wanted to be treated like an adult, so I am treating her like one. Adults who cannot afford housing have to find solutions to their problems. Adults who treat people poorly experience consequences for their behavior. These are not punishments, they are just facts of life." Brian hung up on me, which I had expected. He had encouraged Madison's disrespectful treatment of me, and now he was facing the consequences right along with her. Their relationship was probably not going to survive this crisis, which might actually be the best thing that could happen to Madison in the long run. Over the following months, I did not hear from Madison directly, but I learned through mutual friends that she had moved in with her college roommate temporarily and was apartment hunting. Brian had indeed broken up with her, apparently deciding that her family drama was more than he wanted to deal with. Madison was learning to live on her own income for the first time in her adult life. Meanwhile, I was discovering what life looked like when I put my own needs first for a change. I enrolled in a photography class I had always wanted to take. I bought a reliable new car with cash. I started planning a trip to Europe that I had dreamed about for years, but never thought I could afford. The apartment turned out to be exactly what I needed. It was small enough that I could not accumulate clutter, modern enough that I did not have to worry about repairs and maintenance, and located in a part of town where I could walk to restaurants, shops, and the library. For the first time in decades, I was living exactly the way I wanted to live. 6 months after the house sale, Madison finally called me. Her voice was different, more mature and subdued than I remembered. "Mum," she said, "I know you probably do not want to talk to me, but I needed to tell you that I understand now. I understand what you sacrificed for me, and I understand how terribly I treated you." I had been expecting this call, but I was not sure how I felt about having the conversation. "How are you doing, Madison?" "I am okay," she said, and she did sound okay. "It has been hard, but I am learning a lot. I found a one-bedroom apartment that I can afford on my own, and I have been taking a personal finance class to learn how to budget properly. I had no idea how expensive everything was when you are really on your own." "I am glad you are figuring it out," I said sincerely. "Mum, I owe you an apology that is bigger than any apology I have ever given anyone," Madison continued. "I was selfish and entitled and cruel. I treated you like you were a burden when you were actually taking care of me in ways I did not even understand. I am ashamed of the person I was." There was genuine remorse in her voice, not just regret about the consequences she had faced. This sounded like real growth, not just someone trying to manipulate their way back into a comfortable situation. "I appreciate you saying that, Madison. It means more than you know. I also want you to know that I understand why you did what you did. I think if I had been in your position, I might have done the same thing. I needed to learn these lessons, even though they were painful." We talked for another hour, really talked in a way that we had not done since she was a teenager. Madison asked about my new life, and she seemed genuinely happy when I told her about my photography class and my travel plans. She shared stories about learning to grocery shop on a budget and figuring out how to fix small problems in her apartment instead of calling someone else to handle them. "I keep thinking about all those years when you were working 2 jobs," she said toward the end of our conversation. "I remember you being tired a lot, but I never asked why. I was so focused on my own life that I never thought about what yours was like." "You were a child, Madison. Children are supposed to be focused on their own lives. My mistake was not teaching you to transition out of that mindset as you became an adult. Do you think we can ever have a normal relationship again?" she asked, and I could hear the hope and fear in her voice. "I think we can have a better relationship than we ever had before," I told her honestly. "But it will have to be a relationship between two adults who respect each other, not a mother and child, where one person gives and the other person takes." "I want that," Madison said immediately. "I want to be someone you can be proud of again." "I was always proud of you, honey. I just was not proud of how you were treating people. There is a difference." We agreed to meet for coffee the following weekend, something we had not done since before Brian entered the picture. As I hung up the phone, I felt hopeful about our relationship for the first time in over a year. The following Saturday, I met Madison at a small cafe near her new apartment. She looked different, more mature, and less entitled than she had when she was living in my house. We spent 2 hours catching up on everything that had happened over the past 6 months. Madison had indeed learned to budget, and she was proud of being able to cover all her expenses on her own income. She had also started volunteering at a local literacy program, something she had never shown interest in before. "It feels good to help people, instead of just expecting other people to help me," she said as we finished our coffee. "That is exactly what I hoped you would learn," I told her. "Our relationship is still a work in progress, but it is built on a foundation of mutual respect now instead of one-sided obligation. Madison has never asked me for money, even when she was struggling to afford her security deposit. I have never offered to rescue her from the natural consequences of her choices, even when I wanted to. Last month, she sent me a card for Mother's Day with a handwritten note that said, 'Thank you for loving me enough to let me grow up, even when it was painful for both of us.' Sometimes the hardest lessons teach us the most about love and respect. As I sit in my apartment today, looking at brochures for my upcoming trip to Italy, I know I made the right choice. Love yourself enough to walk away from those who do not value you, even if they are family. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is allowing them to experience the consequences of their actions. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between enabling someone you love and allowing them to learn from their mistakes? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the courage to put yourself first. Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be taken for granted.